Hi, everybody, and welcome to a road edition of Facebook Live from Memorial Stadium in Champaign, Illinois. Tim Newton along with Pete Quinn and Kelly Kitchel, the Boilermakers, getting ready to take on the Fighting Illini of Illinois with kickoff at noon Eastern today. It is chilly here. The temperature right now at 32 degrees, but with the wind coming out of the northwest at about 13 to 14 miles an hour, the wind chill is in the low 20s, and we're really not expecting much change the rest of the day. So what you see is what you get: overcast skies. It just looks like a typical November day in the Midwest. And Pete Quinn, let's hope that the results are better than last week's a little atypical but still chilly outcome against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let's see if the Boilermakers can bounce back today.
Yeah, that's the big question. I thought last week they did not look inspired. They kind of look like they're going through the motions. And if they do that today, it's going to be a very, very long day because they're facing an Illinois team that on paper, you look at how they're dominant on defense. They're number one in about 9 different statistics defensively, and not number one in the Big Ten, number one nationally. They've got the number one running back in the nation. And on paper, you think, God, these guys look unbeatable, but they lost to Indiana at the beginning of the season, and they lost to Michigan State last week. So I absolutely believe Purdue, if they bring their A game, can beat Illinois, but they can't play like they played last week and stay in this game.
Before we get to Kelly Kitchel, if you're watching on Facebook today, thank you first of all, and let us know where you're watching, and we'll try to answer. If you have any questions for us, we'll do our best to take a shot at those. Kitch, the world can change, as we know, in college athletics in about a 3.5 hour span. And you go back to where this program was this year going into the Minnesota game. A lot of questions there, and then the Boilermakers get a road win at Minnesota, follow that with a road win at Maryland. So 3 games left, a quarter of the season still to be played, but today's a really pivotal one.
Yeah, I think we got them right where we want them. I mean, here's the thing. You went to last year, and I think Ohio State was like number 1 in the country, in a bunch of categories. Iowa was number 1 in the country in a bunch of categories. It was just, it wasn't Ohio State last year, was it?
Michigan State.
Michigan State was number 1. And then we went and found a way to win. And so I really, Purdue, I think uninspired is a great term you used, Pete, last week, because it wasn't cold. It was just windy. And it was actually very pleasant on the field. It was just windy in Ross-Ade. I think I don't know if our guys let it get to them, but it's this is a game. This is perfect football weather. I mean, it's going to be cold, but the pads will be cracking. This is what you play for in November. And you still want to play meaningful games. This is still a meaningful game. I mean, and you're right, in a 3.5 hour span, our whole outlook can change. 2 tough games where we didn't play very well at all with Wisconsin and Iowa. And, you come out here and you play really well, and all of a sudden you come out of Champaign, you feel really, really good about it. So it's, I don't know. This is something, these are games that Jeff Brom has gotten his teams to play really, really well on the road, in a tough environment against a good team that's leading the country in a bunch of statistical categories and has found ways to come out with wins. So, I mean, it wouldn't shock me either way today. Really wouldn't. If we come out here and play really well and win, I'll be very happy, but I wouldn't be shocked.
All right, Pete, let's talk about the Boilermakers and specifically the defensive side. I thought the defense played pretty well the first half of the season, but starting with the second half really of the Nebraska game, and since then we have not seen the same defense, and particularly a propensity of giving up big plays.
And this is not a big play offense that we're playing today. In fact, they're last in the Big Ten in yards per reception, and they throw to one receiver, much like Purdue. Our receiver is better than their receiver. I think if they come out and they play just their normal game, I think they're the better football team. And it's hard to say that because of what we saw last 2 weeks. I agreed with everything Kitch just said, but one exception. The last 2 weeks we didn't play bad. We played bad last week. The week before we played bad for 6 minutes. Yep. And I thought we really competed with Wisconsin. But this defense, it's hard to understand them. They held Wisconsin's offense to 2 yards rushing. 2 yards, that's Wisconsin's offense. They held them to 2 yards rushing. So they have the ability to be dominant. They take risks. I think they have 60 tackles for loss. They play behind the line of scrimmage. They got a lot of athletes on that side of the ball. They're aggressive. They play a lot of kids. And I think Coach has done a great job at Illinois. I think he went after the Illinois kids, and he went into the portal market. I think they got 26 kids. All 3 of their quarterbacks transferred from another college. And I think Brett built up a nice team, but I think Purdue is as good or better. They just have to prove it today.
Kids, let's go to the offensive side. And we saw last week that Purdue had a hard time sustaining a passing attack. Now the winds, again, a huge factor in that. The winds will not be as big a factor today, although they will be a factor, not nearly as much. Cold weather, you should be able to play football in cold weather in November in the Big Ten. So what does this offense need to do today to get things going?
Well, I mean, I think that we're going to throw the ball. Aiden O'Connell throws the ball. But I think that, and Jeff Brum has talked about this early in the season, you've got to have a commitment to the run game as well. And I think we lost our commitment to the run game last week and just started slinging it, especially when we went with the wind, and that's when the ball started sailing. It got a couple interceptions. I think he just thought that we had the wind behind us. It was time to sling it around a little bit. But I really think that you have to have that commitment. You got to give Maccabee 15, 20 carries. You got to get the other guys involved and let the O-line get a little bit of nasty. And if you're pass blocking every time, Pete, as you know, you can get a little complacent sometimes. But if you're in there pounding, running the ball, all of a sudden you start getting momentum. You start feeling good. You start wearing down that D line. You start leaning on them a little bit more. And then towards the end of the game, those guys are tired, and you're leaning, puts them on the ground. And so I think you have to have that commitment to it, and let those guys work up front. Let them work, because I think teams are counting on Aiden O'Connell throwing the ball, but you got to utilize what you got, and you got a really, really good running back in Maccabee. You got an O-line that wants to grind and wants to get after it, and let them go.
It's when Kitch just says that, I'm surprised I never thought about this, but during the Jim Young, Mark Herman era, that happened in our games where we would be just dominating them on the ground. But we had an All-American quarterback who was going to graduate from Purdue as the all-time leading passer in the history of college football. Jim Young liked to throw it, but I remember specific games. One that really sticks out to me is we were playing Wake Forest. We were heavily favored. Drove down 8 yards off right tackle, 9 yards off left tackle, 8 yards up the middle, and then decided to start throwing the ball every down, and they got back into the game. And so I think coaches sometimes, and Jim Young was one of the greatest coaches ever coached. He's in the Hall of Fame now. He won everywhere he went. Coaches don't always make the right decisions. And if you listened to Coach Brom talk at the different press conferences this week, he admitted that. He admitted that going into the game, they thought about playing 2 quarterbacks so they could run more. They thought they should run more. And then you get into the game, and unless you've been in that situation, coaching a game, you cannot believe how quickly it goes. And I'm sure hindsight's always 20. He would have run again today. I hope they don't overcorrect today, even though they're going against some really, really good defensive backs. They have 16 interceptions as a team. These guys are very, very disruptive. I still think we can pass on them.
And by the way, the great American philosopher Jim Chaney once told me, don't get bored with success. And I think that's a case a lot of times with coaches that like to throw the football. If they don't throw it in 3 or 4 plays, they all of a sudden got the itch. They got to get back and throw it. And that's not just this staff. It's every staff that likes to throw the football. And sometimes you just got to go with what's working. Talking about Illinois, they're the number one, as Pete mentioned, number one in a lot of categories. Number one in points allowed, total defense. They're number 3 in the country in opposing third down conversion. They're number 3 nationally in red zone, touchdown defense. Go on and on. They'll play 5 players at the line of scrimmage. They basically say, you're not going to run the football against us, and if you try to throw it, you better get the ball out of your hands pretty quickly. The guy I'm looking forward to seeing, Kitch, is a guy named Gabe. His last name is spelled J-A-C-A-S. The J is silent. It's Gabe Acus. His play is not silent. 6'3", 265, a true freshman, and people there are already starting to compare him to Simeon Rice. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. And what they're doing with that 5-man front, they're trying to get everybody singled up. And they're hoping one of their 5D linemen beats an O lineman on the other side, right? And then you get a tackle for loss and you get back in the backfield. You can bring an extra guy. So then your linebacker, who's probably one of your better rushers, usually gets singled up on a running back as well. So they're trying to single enough guys up so that they can win a one-on-one battle up front and create a little chaos in the run game, because when you have every gap filled and everything on the line of scrimmage, it can lend itself to mistakes on the O-line, because you don't see it just because it's different. You haven't seen it. What I do like is that Purdue's got a lot of film on this now. When we saw it last year, it was the first time they kind of rolled it out. It's not like it's a brand new defense that nobody's ever ran before. You know, it's kind of like the old Bear defense. You know, where you just try to put as many guys on the line of scrimmage as you can. But I think that the O-line will get it. You can have some angles. You can do some different things, and there's ways to defeat this for sure. And if you do pick up the right guys, it lends itself to big plays. You got one linebacker usually in the box. Right. You know, if you can pick those guys up, you can get big chunk yards on the ground. So that's what's going to be really interesting. But you're right, they have a lot of really talented D linemen, and that's why they run this defense, because they want their D linemen to win that one-on-one battle.
Let's say hello to a few people checking in. David from Cumberland, Indiana. Brent from Berea, Kentucky. Peggy, who's always watching in St. Louis. Maryland says it's snowing in Decatur, Indiana. Be careful driving around today. I know Pete and Kitch came over today, and a little slipping and sliding on the way over. And my daughter-in-law's watching, so hi to Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
Hey.
The Boilermakers are going to face an Illinois rushing attack that has the nation's best runner, Chase Brown. And he's a guy, Pete, you watch him carry the ball 25, 30, 35 times a game, and it seems that he's as fresh on his last carry as he is on his first. He is a handful at only 5'11 and 205.
5'11", 205, but he averages 5 yards a carry. They give the ball a lot to him. 257 attempts. Reggie Love has the second most attempts with 42. So Chase Brown is their running offense, and sometimes that's an advantage to you. If you can stop the one guy, you've got a good chance of winning this game. Just nobody's been able to stop him. He's averaging 150 yards a game. I think he got to 1,000 yards faster than anybody in the history of Illinois, and it's got a very, very storied history, starting with Red Grange and on. They've had a lot of great backs here, but he's going to go down as one of the best backs to ever play here.
They have a transfer quarterback, Kitch, Tommy DeVito, who played at Syracuse. We saw Syracuse earlier in the season. Had a good career there, has decided to come here, and all he's doing is throwing for 72% completions, which is second best in the country, and he's only thrown 2 interceptions all season. He's doing exactly what you want him to do, and that is he's not making mistakes.
Yeah, he's taking care of the football. He's making good decisions. He's letting his run game really give him an opportunity in the passing game to take care of easy completions, because you got to bring some extra guys in the box sometimes and it gives you one-on-one opportunities outside. So he's doing a terrific job. I think what Purdue's got to do is they got to go hit him. He's been hit. He was hit a few times last week. I think he may have come out of the game for a little bit. And Purdue's got to put some hits on him, and they got to get to the quarterback, get him on the ground, and make him make a little bit quicker decisions, and not feel comfortable back in the pocket.
Hello to Preston in Anna, Texas, and Jordan says they're on their way. Again, be careful coming over if you're driving over from West Lafayette today. Let's go back to the Boilermakers side. This is a trophy game. Right now, Purdue has the Cannon Trophy. It has the Old Oaken Bucket. They're playing for those 2 trophies here in the next 3 weeks. Pete, it's always, every game in college football is special because you only play 12 regular season games, but you put a carrot at the end of that stick, and it makes it a little spicier.
It does, and it's always fun to take that trophy home when you're playing on the road. And Purdue's had recent success against Illinois. I think Darrell Hazel won 3 Big Ten games, one against Nebraska and 2 against Illinois. Right. And the overall series, we have a 1-game lead. I think it's like 46 and 45. Yep. But the Cannon series, we got a little bit of a lead. So Purdue's had some recent success against Illinois, and Purdue's had some teams that weren't very good over the last few years, but they always seem to do okay against the Illini. We just have to hope that trend continues, and it's good to have those trophies back home where you feel like they belong.
By the way, the Boilermakers have won 5 straight games here in Memorial Stadium. Purdue's last loss here came in Danny Hope's second year back in 2010. Kitch, one of the players that we saw step up last week for the Boilermaker defense was Lawrence Johnson. Kind of amazing. He didn't have a quarterback sack until last week. He got 1.5, and I thought he spent a large part of the day in the Iowa backfield last week.
Well, he is the guy that when you scout Purdue, you got to plan for him. You got to have a plan for Lawrence Johnson. I think a lot of teams, and that's one of the reasons he's getting a lot of double teams. He's creating a lot of attention for himself by playing in the backfield. And what I like about Lawrence is he's got a motor. He plays in the backfield a lot. He may not get to the quarterback every time, but he's getting near him. He's making plays on the ground in the backfield, getting tackles for loss. He's doing I think he does a good job of exploding. And what I like about the overall defensive line is you can keep him fresh. We're playing 10, 11, 12 guys sometimes up front. So we've seen in the past when Lawrence Johnson's got to go 50, 60 plays, he gets tired towards the end of the games. And we've been able to keep him a little fresher this year by rotating guys through, and I think that's a huge advantage. And I think you're going to just see him continually get better as the season goes on here because he's a really, really good player, for one. Now he's got a little, he's getting a little bit of success getting to the quarterback. We'll see if we can get there a little bit more.
Our friend Scott Leverin says he's watching and enjoys the show. Thanks for watching, Scott. By the way, we'll be on next week again for the last home game, and we'll also have a Facebook Live segment in the last game, the Bucket game. We'll be down in Bloomington. So the rest of the season we'll be with you before kickoff. It'll be an hour and a half before kick and a half hour before our pregame broadcast begins. And we don't have a start time next week either for Northwestern. We should get that either tonight or sometime tomorrow. We know that Charlie Jones, Pete, has had a sensational season. 83 catches. He needs 56 yards today for 1,000 for the season. He would be the 16th Purdue player in history to do that. I think one of the challenges for the Boilermakers this year, a consistent number 2 threat. We're still waiting for that person to step up. Maybe Payne Durham, maybe somebody else.
Everybody's waiting, and every week the three of us have a conversation about this. We wonder who that will be, and that question hasn't been answered. I think Payne Durham needs to be utilized more than he is. I think he's very, very reliable. He is the second leading receiver. He's got 41 receptions on the year compared to Charlie Jones' 83, but then you drop down all the way to 25 with TJ Sheffield. And last week I thought it was more noticeable. Well, it was accurate. Charlie Jones was targeted, I believe, like 20 times, an amazing amount of times that he was targeted. And I don't think anybody else is targeted more than 4. So that's something that the opposing teams see. Mm-hmm. So they've got some great defensive backs. They're going to be paying particular attention to Charlie Jones. Somebody else has to step up today.
Michael hopes we're staying warm. Right now the windows are open in the booth. That is subject to change as the day goes on. And John says it's sunny, windy, and 60 degrees today in Littlestown, Pennsylvania. A little bit of what we had last Saturday. Back on the Purdue defensive side, I think the defensive backs, Kitch, have been a little, they've been sketchy in terms of giving up big plays here. There's really no other way to put it. We've seen Purdue's defensive backs flat-footed at times and just not in the right position. And this is an Illinois team that's going to kind of chip, and then they'll throw it to Brian Hightower or Casey Washington down the field and try to beat you with a deep one.
Yeah, they're going to try to lull you into sleep a little bit and then hit you with a big play. And so, I think you said suspect. Is that what you said?
I did.
I think you said suspect. I think that's a good term. It's just we just don't know what we're going to get out of them in the secondary. And we don't know how long we'll get out of the game. It seems like Corey Trice and Jamari Brown have both exited games early, before the game was over a few times with some nagging injuries. So you don't know how long the starters will play. They tried to move Cam Allen around a little bit, played him at different positions. But I think the biggest part, again, for today is going to be tackling. I think that Chase Brown, he's going to get loose through the first and second waves a little bit. Those guys, the safeties and the corners and things, they're going to have to tackle. They have to tackle. And coverage is going to be one thing. You got to stay in coverage, but that's going to be the biggest thing is not letting him get loose for a 60, 70-yard games. We miss a tackle in the secondary. And so hopefully, we saw Sanusi Kane move back a little bit away from the line. He loves to come up and make plays on the line. He's such a hard hitter. And but we just got to have sure tacklers back there. And I don't think there has to be anything fancy today. I really don't think you have to disguise coverages or really you just got to play solid football. You got to be in the correct coverage for one. You can't go off the rails and try to do your own thing and blitz when there's nobody help behind you, different things. So you got to be in the correct coverage for one, and just do your job in the secondary. When they come to you, get them on the ground somehow. So to me today is not one of those days where our secondary has to really, I don't want to say shine. They just got to play solid football.
The Boilermakers, by the way, injury-wise, probably about similar to what they were last week. No King DeRue today, no Brock Thompson, and that may be the case going forward through the rest of the season. We'll see. If there is one weakness, or at least soft spot in this Illinois game, it's certainly in their punting. Hugh Robertson has not had a good season this year. He had a 6-yard punt last week against Michigan State, and he's averaging less than 38 yards a kick. Interesting story, though. He's an Australian, which I think is a rule now in college football. He was in the Australian Army. He's 29 years old. He's the third oldest player in Division I football. And speaking of him being in the Army, it gives us a chance to say thank you to our veterans. Yesterday was Veterans Day. Every day should be Veterans Day, but we thank all of the men and women watching today for their service.
And happy birthday. I think it was the 247th birthday of the Marine Corps on Thursday. So congratulations or thank you to all the veterans, but also happy birthday to the Marine Corps.
What's the key today for the Boilermakers? You're going to talk about this a little bit later on the radio broadcast, but give me a key that you really need to see today.
Well, you talked about looking for some flaws in Illinois. One we hadn't talked about is they have fumbled 11 times.
Yes.
They've given up 11 fumbles this year. So I think one of the keys is the weather's not bad. It's not going to be wet, but it is kind of cold. They've shown a propensity to fumble the football. I'd like Purdue to win the turnover battle today because I think that's a big part of the reason Illinois has had success this year. And I think it's a big reason Purdue lost to Wisconsin when they gave up those turnovers early and got down so quickly. So I think the turnover battle is always important. It's particularly important today. And I think just Kitch nailed it when you started talking about the defensive backs. I'm not so worried about their pass coverage today, but they have had a lot of missed tackles this season, and that has got to be cleaned up today because they are going to have the opportunity to make some plays. They've got to make them when they have that opportunity.
Kitch, I think it's your turn to go first today, isn't it, on the players of the game?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
go.
Gosh,
It's all you.
I take both of Pete's as well because I always enjoy that. Here's the thing. So Aiden's had a couple rough games on offense. You know, he's had six interceptions in the last 2 games.
Yep.
Is that correct? I'm going to go with Aiden O'Connell. I think he's such a good. I mean, we know he's an All-American player. He's got a great arm. I'm going to go with Aiden O'Connell up front to go ahead and take care of business on offense. Defensively, boy, I got to go with my guy.
You want to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
It's been rough. I'm going to go with my guy, Sanusi Kane. I love that kid. I love the way he plays football, and I think him making tackles in the secondary is going to be key today. So I'm going to go with Sanusi Kane on defense.
Mr. Quinn.
Offense, I'm going to go with Maccabee only because I think it's very, very important our running game shows up today. He's going to see the #1 running back in the country right now when we play Illinois. I think he's got that kind of ability. I think he's a special young man, a special running back, and I think today could be a big day for him. And defensively, I don't know if he'll be the player of the game, but he needs to be today. I think we need to see Jalen Graham's best game today because he's probably our best defensive player athletically. He really, really needs to have a great game.
I'm going to go with Payne Durham offensively. I think maybe he may have a big game against this secondary. He's got 41 catches coming into the day, which is 5th best among tight ends in college football. So I'll take Payne on the offensive side. And about Kadron Jenkins on the defensive side, maybe a sack or 2. And you mentioned fumbles, maybe a blindside hit that results in a fumble.
I like every one of the picks that we just made.
All right. Final thoughts today, fellas. A game again against one of the top 25 teams in the country, a team that was ranked in the top 15 just last week. Kitch, this would be an awfully big win if Purdue can pull off an upset today.
It would be an awfully big win, and it's we saw Michigan State do it. It's not like that they're unbeatable, right? I mean, we've seen guys do it, and we've seen Purdue do it in the past. They've come into hostile environments. We just saw them do it last year with Iowa. They've come in against really good teams and played their best football. And so I think that we got a chance at coming in here, and what I'm hopeful is this team, and I think I said this early in the week to a guy, and I don't know that they had a team meeting. I don't know if anything goes on, but this is a week that those guys need to come together and start playing for each other and really saying, I'm going to play. Pete Quinn, I'm going to play for you today. All right? I'm going to make sure I don't let you down. And I'm hopeful that they can do that. And if they do, we got the talent to win this game.
Pete?
Well, I'm going to keep my eye on the game today, but I'm also keeping my eye on my phone. Has nothing to do with the game, but my daughter Kristen is supposed to deliver our granddaughter today.
Is that your first grandchild?
Well, we have, my son got married a year and a half ago to his wife Jordan. She had a 10-year-old son, so we have a grandson. Okay. But Kristen is due today. Hannah's due in May with a little boy. So we're just going to get all the grandkids in all at once. So that makes it exciting. But today, Kitch is right. It's up to the kids. You know, in years past, a lot of years past, Purdue, when they're playing a team that's playing as well as Illinois is today, you have to hope you get Purdue's best game, and you have to hope that you don't get the best game for the other team. I don't think we're there anymore. I think Jeff Brom has brought Purdue to the point where if Purdue plays their best, they can pretty much beat anybody on their schedule, including this Illinois team. Illinois got a very, very good football team, but so does Purdue. They just have to play together, like Kitch said.
Well, the math is pretty simple today. If the Boilermakers lose, they're eliminated from the Big Ten West race. If they win, they've got a chance, but they'll need some help. If Illinois wins and beats either Michigan or Northwestern, the Illini are the Big Ten West champions. So they've got a lot to play for, and today is their senior day, so a little extra emotion on the Illini sideline. Again, we'll be with you next week before the Northwestern game. Don't have a kickoff time yet, but stay tuned for that. And when you do get that kickoff time, just subtract an hour and a half, and that's when we'll be on next week on the Purdue Athletics site. For Kelly Kitchel, for Pete Quinn, I'm Tim Newton. We'll see you next week at Ross-Ade Stadium. Boiler up, everybody.
Boiler up.